All right. So I thought we could kick off this conversation with a discussion about Faker's legacy because interestingly,
I'm the C in this case, but yeah, keep going. I'm a C. There you go.
Interestingly, we have a very unique window into a what if universe, which is what if Faker's teammates that he went to multiple international tournament finals with and 3 consecutive LCK finals had to play without him. What would that look like? And the answer is extremely fucking bad. So, there aren't that many times, I think, in a player's career outside of injury where you get these kind of unique windows into what the team dynamic is, and especially in an esport, a team-based esport, where shot calling is so important, right? And play strategy is so important. And that's the thing, is because you don't have coaches in the game of League of Legends Live, it is up to the players to have that level of strategic planning and communication themselves. So it's very unlike traditional sports in that sense. Because most traditional sports, either you can't shot call in the same way you can in League of Legends because you're on the opposite side of a field or a court from each other, and any communication that you do is not private, right? The other team can hear you. That's why you have to use coded signals. Or there are coaches like in football, American football, that are there between every play, even have radios into certain players' helmets in order to help assess the situation. Now, obviously, the players still do have agency, which is why players like Peyton Manning were so impressive. But at the end of the day, like, esports is still much more communication based during the game than most other sports. And I think we're seeing Faker's effect in that aspect, which probably most of us underrated.
We're all looking at him as a mid laner, individual player. We could all see that, like, the Chovies of the world, the scouts of the world, left him in the dust years ago, and he's not at that level. In fact, even in Korea, people like BDD are better. But what we're learning, like your analogy there, Monty, is not Peyton Manning. Faker is like Drew Brees at the end. Yeah, his arm was gone. Yeah, he was getting injured. But, like, he obviously knew how to run the offense. He knew how to pass the ball to Alvin Kamara and go, now I'm going to get out of the way. It wasn't like the old days where he fired the rocket. Like, in this analogy, Faker knew how to potentially roam for top with Zeus, how to team fight. Probably, if you look at the shot call, when not to team fight. That was the thing I always found impressive last year. They had that, like, counter meta where their style was like, we don't engage, which was very rare, actually. Most teams just opted into those fights, like you saw at MSI. So what you see here is, one, Faker's actual shot calling impact on the game and what he did. Like, maybe he even knew he would get ganked and all that sort of shit. Maybe he's drawing pressure. And then the other thing to me is, as far as I can tell, we talked about it many times on this show, ever since Diney, that guy, got kicked out the team, who'd had all those underwhelming results in all his teams, ever since he got booted out, they had Polt come in, who I noticed the T1 fans got fired immediately. As far as I can tell, the results are the same when Polt was fired, by the way, you idiots. He wasn't the guy doing tactics. He was there to be like a head coach. From that moment on, it really just seems like Faker is the coach as well, like we talked about in the past. Because the other people who came in, the style never changed, the way they played never changed, it was the same players. And you look now, like I joked on Best Damn League Show, which is out on this channel, by the way, I joked with Dom, because obviously he's loving the downfall of T1. It's like, that's how you know Bengi even knows he's a fraud. Because when he saw the writing on the wall, he was like, I'm getting out of here before it actually, like, burns down around me. Like, if I go now, there'll be like a sub coach. Poor Tom, of course, has to take the beating again. The whipping boy of fucking, if you know what a whipping boy is, look that up. That's an amazing analogy. The whipping boy of T1 has to come in, and he's going to be the one blamed when they don't make worlds.
I just love the fact that Tom was basically Bengi's substitute jungler in 2015, and now he's basically the substitute coach for whenever Bengi is failing, Tom gets thrown in. This poor Udyr one trick. It's too good. It's too good.
He's able to bear a slap, Monty. That's the thing, isn't it? You know,
nice.
He can take it. He is the whipping boy.
Well done.
So sick, isn't it? That's so sick. Because here's the other thing. Spoiler, watch the Competitive Edge episode that comes out like tomorrow or something. We've already done the bets, don't worry. We're going just against T1 every time they're available. Like, at this point in time, the real question isn't this, Monty. Will they correct course? Right now, my question is, how bad can it get? Can they really lose to everyone in the league? Because if they do, remember what we talked about, like, 2 months ago before MSI, this team had the core had one of the best win rates in the history of League of Legends. Massive sample size, and they were like 90% win rate, like you pointed out. That is going to go in the toilet, I'm sorry. Even if they do course correct, because here's the thing, it should still be possible. You do still have some really good players, but it's just that right now, I actually think it's the morale issue that's killing them dead, mate. I just think the rest of the team sort of like, fuck, we're just done. Like, we've lost the leader. Like, it is going bad. And by the way, just like Fnatic, TSM, when it goes bad in these teams, it's going to go really bad because they also know the fan pressure. They know that the trucks are literally on the way. They know that it's going to get really fucking bad for them. Some of them might lose their jobs in their minds. I don't think so, but maybe they think that.
Yeah, look, I think, we'll talk about the morale issue, but you point out the esports bet, so we can talk about that angle right now. Just because some of these odds, we did Competitive Edge, it actually was just released on Esports Bet's channel. If you guys want that content, you can head on over there and check it out. Please subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. Also, FaceCheck is over there if you guys are interested. So basically, what's been going on is that even their upcoming match versus Nongshim at one point had over 3.0 odds. And remember, this is a Nongshim that nearly beat T1 with Faker and Bengi. And now we have these like underdogs. And considering that T1 just got completely slapped by DRX, it wasn't a close series. Sure, they'll have another week to integrate with Poby, but to Thorin's point, that's the issue with having the morale. So T1 odds completely skewed right now. And you guys also should hit up our match of the week, as we do every week here on Last Free Nation. The match of the week is Heretics versus BDS this week. If you place a prediction or a wager on that match, you can get an additional 10% bonus to your winnings, up to $100 USDT. So that means, or its equivalent in other cryptocurrencies. It's only on your first bet, guys, by the way, but it is a good way. I took the slight underdog of BDS because I think that there's a good matchup with Adam into Evie, and I believe in BDS more than I believe in Heretics making a miracle run, especially.
Big, right?
Yeah, it's over 2.0 for BDS, but especially with Zeri and Yuumi cycling out, I think that does limit Heretics' upside on this patch. So I would check that out. You can also get our usual deals of a 50% deposit bonus up to $100. And $100 risk-free, or $100 risk-free first bet. But in order to get the 10% bonus on our match of the week, you have to use our referral code, which is down below. So you can head on over there now and get that done. But to your point about morale, Thorin, I mean, it has to be a morale issue because it's even the individual ability of the players that appears to be decaying, because that doesn't explain why Zeus's, Faker's non-existence in the team doesn't explain why Zeus's individual laning and individual ability seems to have fallen off a cliff. It doesn't explain, it kind of explains Owner's inconsistency, but he was inconsistent this split even before Faker left, and so was Keria. I just wonder how many times they can go to a finals, because think about the legacy. To your point, they went 18-0 last spring. They went 17-1 in this last spring split. How much do they have to win? And yet they still have a negative record in finals. They've lost to Genji twice in finals. They won spring finals of last year, but they lost both international finals and they bombed out of MSI. They literally have one major title win to their name, and it was in their honeymoon inaugural split with this roster. And otherwise, it has been a legacy of collapse in the moments that matter.
And that's at the best, like you're saying. So now if you take out the fake angle, the most experienced player, and here's the thing I'll say as well. I can't even off the top of my head remember any time Faker actually entered a final. He just sort of like didn't play like a star. He just didn't go for it. He sort of like waited for them to give him the trophy or something, didn't he? So here's the problem. I think people went too far the other way. He was never bad. Faker hasn't been bad in this era. It's just that, like, he only showed those brief glimpses in spring of ever being, like, a dominant player again. Aside from that, his whole job in the team was just prop the team up, like, make the rest of the team work, which was brilliant. It actually was working, but when you take that piece away, like you say, he was the spork in the middle of the wheel, and now it's all just falling apart, isn't it?
Yeah, and, if you look at the way that T1 has played over the last year, they have relied a lot of the time on their shot calling. How many times have we seen them go for these 20-minute barons by playing the map well and be able to sneak it out from underneath their opponent? They're very famous for doing that, playing with vision in the fog of war. They were running pick comps for a lot of this year. What do pick comps need? They need aggressive warding and strong vision control so that you can actually eliminate somebody and engage on them before they reach an objective, because you're not necessarily as good as 5v5 team fighting with some of these compositions. Now, that takes a lot of forethought. in order to do that. And it takes strong shot calling. How many times have we seen them lay vision traps or do unexpected things on the map or lure people into bad positions? Apparently, that was all or mostly Faker setting up these plans for the team due to his vast experience and game knowledge. And now that they don't have him, we'll never know for sure because the morale issue is also a killer and it's also affecting them. There's clearly multiple things that are going on. But as we look at this, it appears to be very, very good for Faker's legacy. Like the more this team loses, the better Faker is going to look in terms of his career.
Justifiably so. Because that's always the part that you never get, actually, is the problem with League is you can't see what a teammate does for someone and you can't see what a shot caller brings. Like the best examples ever, everyone knows the original one was in the Cloud9 when High stepped out. It was the same thing. High wasn't as good as a mid laner. He had failing health. In came Jensen, a way more skilled player. And even though Jensen was like good, the team just fell apart. Like Meteos didn't work then. Then they had issues with bot lane. Eventually, obviously, High had to come back and play like scoffed jungler. Then you think of other examples in history. It's like, I think Perks leaving G2 is a classic one. Everyone thought, well, Reckless, that's a side grade, isn't it? Like he's as good in ADC, maybe even better. And then the team was about, I wouldn't say they were bad because they were certainly good in the regular split, but they were about half as good in pressure situations. They lost all that genius of stuff they did in the mid game. And that wasn't that it was only Perks, but you could see whatever he did bring, like I thought, like sort of radiated out to the other teammates. It looks like it's a similar scenario in T1.
Yeah, except arguably even worse because it doesn't look like we thought Keria was doing a lot of the shot calling on this team, and his form has also been extremely suspect. So, I mean, Faker's we knew some of Faker's contributions to comms because T1 releases comms, and there have been snippets. Obviously, Faker doing things like split pushing and saying, oh, they're going to come kill me right now. And you guys go do this objective while that happens. And, self-sacrificing or being able to see the game a couple minutes into the future or manipulate the other team to doing what he wants. But it has been even more shocking than I think we expected. And part of that must be, who knows what Bengi's contribution was. To your point, Thorin, when Denny left the team after the spring of 2021, that was when they ran their failed 10-man roster. We said at that time, by the way, guys, another time where we were right, Faker is the coach of this team. Now, the reason why I knew that is because I know people who know these teams or who are inside of these teams, by the way. And so when we say things like Faker is the coach now, Faker was the de facto coach now, and he more or less has been this entire time. Sure, bringing in Bengi added some other voices, but if you're T1, this just goes with having a superstar player. If you bring in a superstar player with extensive experience, they are very difficult to coach. Who is qualified to coach Faker? Ooh.
That's why I always said the angle on the LS hire that people don't get is crazy, is apparently Faker signed off on that. He was up for LS being like the strategic coach. That's actually an insane fucking W you can get there. That's why I told you I was so shocked by that whole incident. It's not about whether I thought he should be the coach. Like, the point is, Faker is clearly quite selective with who can coach him, as you're saying, not least because he seems to have, in his latter years, an unusually high level of understanding of the game that isn't just how to play mid lane.
Yeah, and as an example, we've seen the same thing in traditional sports. So Peyton Manning, when he was on the Broncos, had an offensive coordinator named Adam Gase, who had very little success outside of working with Peyton Manning, and got a lot of hype.
Jets or some after that, right?
He was terrible with the Jets. And so what you see is Peyton Manning was really the one who was the offensive coordinator of the Broncos. He was running that offense. And sometimes you need just kind of a pushover as a coach or a guy who's going to rubber stamp your decisions as a great player. But if we talk about Peyton Manning, who is probably the greatest quarterback in NFL history at making offensive adjustments at the line, who is going to do that better? You can't, it's very hard to find that person. And that person does have to be more or less a crony of the great player. And if Faker is doing the same thing and making these calls and these adjustments in game, it doesn't make sense to have a super authoritative strategic coach. They tried that with Denny. They tried that with the 10-man roster. It exploded. And then 6 months after that exploded, we see this roster that is doing super well. Now, we can't know what caused T1's collapse in many of these big events because factually, T1 has been the favorite in every single final they've been in outside of summer last year. Anytime they've hit a domestic or an international final, they have been a big favorite, including this spring that they lost. I mean, what's so crazy is that there are people who are rewriting history right now, and this really pisses me off, saying that T1 wasn't great during this spring run.
Yeah.
They are saying, oh yeah, they lost, they bombed out at MSI. The eye test checked out on these guys like a motherfucker.
Dude,
halfway
here's all
through
you
this
need to
spring
know.
split.
I made this point when we were on one of these shows. Dude, when we were down to the last 4, Dom, the T1 here, had T1 winning MSI. I'm not saying that shit, I'm pointing out. If even he's like, fuck it, I'll hop on. That means that he just sees the trains coming into the station, mate. This is the time to get on.
Like, I don't know what to say. The T1 fans are very annoying. And I know people want to push against their narrative because
played for T1 and Flackhead at the same time and like the bottle and that like the internet, like their joke is everyone would get banned off the internet. Like the toxicity levels would be so high.
I know they're super annoying guys, and I know we all hate them, but it is true that the spring split T1 in the Keria plays Caitlyn and Jhin, support meta.
Pfizer, everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
They were so fucking good, guys. If you watch some of the plays they were making, if you watch their level of coordination, when you see Owner and Faker doing these mid lane dives with Gragas and Lee Sin, this team was executing beautifully. They were one of the cleanest teams by the eye test that I have seen, and I have seen the entire competitive history of League of Legends, okay? So let's not rewrite the narrative of the past. Now, once the meta shifted and whatever happened within that team that caused them to play so abysmally, especially against Billy at MSI, we will never know. Why did they do things that were clearly against their strengths? Why were they focusing on trying to prop up top lane and ignoring Billy diving them bot when they were the team that dove people bot for the entire split? We will never know why these things occurred. I would love to have been a part of those conversations or be able to listen in into why the decisions they made. It was self-sabotaging, I feel, in many ways, or perhaps overconfident. But this team was incredibly good. And especially as JDG was just kicking off and JDG was looking a bit shakier as they kind of put the pieces together. Now, that's entirely different now. JDG looks fucking amazing. And they look fucking amazing at MSI. And it's hard to imagine them out, losing the title when it comes to LPL. It's hard to imagine them not being the favorite going into the World Championship. But I do think it's good to recognize when T1 was super strong. And that's really the tragedy of this roster, is that we never got to really see them complete their runs. They had extremely high highs, but when it mattered, they would flame out. And that sucks. Because I would love to see Faker win another international title before he retires.
That's why, if people don't remember, like if T1 was never good, then why did people call Keria the best player in the world? By the way, if you're support, your team has to be cracked for you to be the best player as support. Like, it is not a position that can, by definition, carry the game. And in fact, I even thought, quite frankly, Monty, a lot of Western fucking players pushed the boat out trying to copy Keria, and they couldn't. They didn't have when they played the Ashe support, the fucking Kaiser support, it didn't look the same, mate. I even thought the analogy for you, it's just for you, no one else knows Overwatch. It's like that thing when Jonak was the best player in season 1 of Overwatch, and all the other supports were like, I want to be pocketed, and then the coaches had to tell him, like, you ain't Jonak, bro. You know what I mean? So it's like, eventually it was a waste of time. If you don't know, he was like the MVP as a support player. It was the same shit. So that's why that team it was amazing. Like, they actually did look like if they won, it'd be historic. So yeah, I agree. I always hate whenever there's a shot for history and like the streak ends at 14 and the record is 15, or like you say, I hate how many times someone's been going for a grand slam and they fuck it up last minute. And like even G2, they fucked it up in the last match. They win one more BO5 a West. I think people still haven't understood, Monty. One day separated a Western team being the only team ever to do the Grand Slam. Now, obviously the domestic ones would be easier, but to win MSI and Worlds over fucking Koreans and LPL would have been like, that would have been like something for the ages in esports. So I always think it sucks when history like just gets the swerve at the last second. You don't quite get it. You'll get blue balls on it.
I mean, at least G2 did win an international event, unlike this iteration of T1. it is really hard. It is really hard to watch, and this is just the bias. You also have to consider that the bias of the format of League of Legends plays into this, because we only get 2 patches that we play international tournaments on. Had we had a normal, and by normal I mean normal in the history of all esports, tournament cycle, like we've had in many other games in the past over the 25 years of esports history that we have. We would have seen an international tournament on the patch where T1 was super good, and they would have won that tournament, guys. I hate to say, they would have fucking smacked people at that tournament. But unfortunately, the peak of their form came in the middle of a regular season.
Yeah, if this was the CSGO circuit, they'd probably win like 2 titles then, and then maybe they failed a major in that analogy, By the way, I'll give you a quick example where I do that Thorin thing, where I'm right and I'm historically correct. It just really irritates you that I am right and I'm the one saying it. So get basically the whole episode. But watch this. Hey guys, remember when Froggen, the Western Faker, was playing on Golden Guardians? It was in season 9, and he was really fucking good. He was winning on like Vel'Koz. He was playing the Karthus when Karthus was a jungler. He was like matching up into people, even though he had like contracts as his dodgy ass jungler. And then obviously like Hort was. You're probably thinking, shut the fuck up talking about season 9. That was 4 years ago, Thorin. Oh, really? Because last time Faker won an international tournament was season 6. How many years ago was that, dickhead? Exactly. So if you want me to shut the fuck up about Froggen, don't ever tell me that Faker is the player he was all that time. The first half of his career, he was mega. The second half of his career is this captain role. It's a totally different style. He hasn't been the best for a long time now. So all I'm doing is just putting it into, let's just get in the fucking contrast here. Let's see what actually is going on. Because all you need to know is this. The joke is, I'm going to be relative here, obviously. Froggen was better more recently than Faker was. There you go. Just drop that one.
Whoa.
There's the bath bomb for you. Fizzing up.
I don't know. Faker was pretty good this spring, but whatever.
No, relative. We're talking relative.
Relative. All right.
Yeah, relative to the region, obviously. Not like season 2 when Faker was just some noob playing normals and Froggen was better than him. Alston stole that in as well. Another thing that's true. That is true. Go look it up.
Objectively true. Faker didn't debut until spring of 2013.
Dude, Froggen made an OGN final before Faker. It's fucking slacker. What are you talking about? This guy needs to step his game up. I'm going to go all day.
Also, here we go. Froggen also made an OGN final in his first season in OGN. Faker didn't do that.
Exactly. There you go. So all I'm saying is, which F is the better one, Froggen or Faker? Will we ever know? Sadly, they didn't play each other, except that 1v1 All-Stars. Froggen won on Anivia.
Why do you remember these things?
I remember everything, motherfuckers. Don't worry about that. Don't you worry about that. I remember it all.
Why?
The joke is, here's the trivia. Because Faker agreed to play the Anivia as a 1v1 matchup, because Froggen's Froggen, he didn't even try to kill him, he just farmed him one by got in the 100 CS, which is also the most genius way to win the 1v1. Because Faker was obviously thinking, like, well, I'm going to get like some part. And he's like, no, it's like, I'm Froggen, homie. Do you don't know what I do? Barishnikov danced, Pavarotti song. This is why I farm minions on Anivia. Watch me farm.
Froggen PvE to the win.
Exactly.
Fabulous. Yeah. So I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation because the legacy of Faker continues to grow. And what I love about this, I mean, obviously I don't love Faker being in physical pain.
The obvious angle that will really make it the perfect movie is if he somehow comes back fucking like, oh my God, it's Willis Reed. He's here for the finals. Like, if he rocks up for playoffs, plays, and he's decent, mate. They can never talk any shot Faker ever again. Then it'll be godlike, won't it?
What happens if the entire team starts playing better? Because that's the thing, is that it's not just him gone. His teammates are playing badly, probably because they're demotivated, which I don't even blame them. Like, the expectations on this team from the fan base, from absolutely everybody, not even their anti-fans, there's huge expectations around these teams. Like, the haters have expectations. And it is very difficult when you've fallen short so many times. So if you see the renaissance of T1 when Faker returns and they look like they can snap back into form immediately, and it looks like, to at least a certain degree, part of that is his shot calling and his presence within the games. I mean, the mystique around Faker grows substantially. It's going to be glorious. I mean, I hope it happens because, frankly, like, the rest of the LCK looks kind of shit. So
And also, all I'm going to say is this. Obviously, Faker is the muse. That's why when I say this name, you're all going to think, yeah, where has he been? Where's Theon been at for the last, 2 years? I tell you what, Faker comes back and they make the finals. Probably do a fucking article again. Like, the old Theon might come back. Theon might be on fire again. You never know.
Well, he's in Valorant now. We lost him. We lost him to Valorant.
That's gross. Mate, you used to watch StarCraft. And now you're already at Elite. Now you're in Valorant, like children's CSGO. Not even once, mate. Come on, have some self-respect. Then again, in some ways, I'm CSGO and you're Valorant. So, just saying, if we're doing a ratio. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.